Hello and welcome back to A Drunk History of Middle-earth. This is a show where we take the legendarium created by J.R.R. Tolkien and have a good, simple, wholesome chat about it. Sometimes it's a drunk person, me, trying to explain stories or events, and sometimes it's breaking down the stories and concepts as if we're talking to a drunk person. I'm Chris, I'm an avid Tolkien nerd, I'm still learning and realising how much I actually don't know. And joining me is your co-host and my lovely wife Rebecca. Do you want to say hello?
Hello, I'm Rebecca, a complete novice to all things Tolkien and nerdy in general. Although now I've watched all 3 films, extended editions, and can now confirm that I have been converted to the religion headed by Elrond Tubbard.
Long may he live. Right.
Zoltan.
That's the intro sorted. Let's get into today's episode. That's take 2. Hello. Happy Friday. So the first take, I spat on your arm with my Pepsi and I asked you what you'd done last week and you completely blanked and you ended up just saying for about 30 seconds. So, how's your week been, my lovely wife?
It's been okay.
What have you been up to? You watched a lot of telly.
I've watched Bling Empire.
Right.
And it's not...
Nothing to do with jewellery.
Say what you said before.
No. It's terrible telly. No, it's terrible telly. No, okay, alright, well, I'm happy to say I feel like I'm recovering quite well from COVID. I went out for a run today and you didn't have to come and get me. Which is
that's a positive.
Always a positive. I've had some good feedback on last episode, which is always nice.
I know, I'm shocked.
Me too. But I suppose it's a far cry from our first episode of... I was saying to someone earlier today as well, like, it's interesting how me and you learn how to talk to each other when we're facilitating this kind of like unseen third person, which is the listener.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, isn't it? Like we've settled into it really quickly over like 8. This will be our 9th episode, right? Where we've learned how to talk, knowing that it's going to be listened to.
Yeah, but I don't look at you while I'm talking. I find that's really easy.
Yeah? What, like when we're recording or when in real life?
Yeah, in recording, because while recording, I need to think and use my brain, and I'm not good at multitasking. So I find it easier to speak to you, but you probably noticed I don't really look you in the eye very often because I'm too busy concentrating. Like, you're the multitasker in this relationship. And especially with all the names of people and all the information I'm having to take in from Lord of the Rings and, like, you know, all the leaves names and all the grains of sand that are named individually and all the trees that have different names.
Well, this week I'm going to give you some names of mountains and you're going to fucking remember them. Last episode, what do you remember what we talked about last week? So the week before we'd covered the creation of the universe and Eru, God, and then...
So we talked about they created the mountains and the scape, the landscape, and there was 2 lanterns.
Yes.
And they mingled together and create this massive light. Yeah?
Yeah, in the centre of the world on the Isle of Almaran.
And the world was completely flat. And
it's still flat at this point.
They were aiming for symmetrical.
Yes, and they got it, yeah.
Morgoth.
Not Morgoth yet, Melkor, but you're right.
Melkor was like fucking it up and twisting things and bashing his fists. And he went running off into the darkness.
Yes.
And had other people follow him and join him.
Yeah, more or less.
And he then, the Valar and the Maiar, who were on Earth, they had a rest and decided to have a party.
Yes.
And during this time, Melkor created, at the very outskirts where he couldn't be seen as well, he created a giant fortress.
Yeah. And you say you've got a shit memory, and that's perfectly what we talked about.
I'm getting better.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, do you remember...
The meds are kicking in.
Do you remember about the fortress? Do you remember much about it?
It was pretty impenetrable
Kind of,
and
yeah.
it kind of leached into the beautiful symmetrical earth.
So yeah, it was
its
the point.
Darkness
Yeah,
spread
it was,
its roots.
It was kind of from that point outwards that is sickness spread across the
Yeah.
world, like parts of the world. Well, Middle Earth. Awesome. And then, do you remember what happened after that? There was a fight. The lanterns got trashed, and the world got broken and changed.
Yeah.
And because of that, the Valar fucked off west.
Because they were like, oh no, we're going to keep out of things now.
Because
they were all fighting against each other. Well, they were trying to protect, but in trying to protect, they destroyed things and messed a lot of what they created up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Bang on. And then we ended the episode with Yavanna and Nienna singing the tree.
Yes.
Yavanna sang the trees into existence.
And that was the grandfather tree to the tree that's in Minas Tirith.
Minas Tirith, yeah, that's the one. It
blooms when the next day Aragorn appears.
When
it blooms every time there's
the
a king.
The king returns, yeah. Right, okay, so...
right, my job's done for the podcast.
That was amazing. That you get the first gold sticker for this podcast. Can it not be a
gold leaf?
You get a gold leaf of Laurelin.
Thank you. That means a lot.
And if you do well, but not as well as today, you'll get a silver leaf of Telperion.
And then if I get a certain amount of leaves, do I then get golden time at the end of school?
You get 10 minutes at the end of the podcast to talk about whatever you want. Doesn't have to be about Lord of the Rings.
Oh, Lord.
But no, I digest. Right.
Everyone switches off at that point.
Right, well, so... This, we listened to the last podcast on the left with those three lads in the cover like true crime and like cults and stuff, and we listened to the American ones.
Yeah.
So they have the concept of an episode that's called like a relaxed fit, where it's just kind of like chilling, chatting, where it's not about a particular hardcore subject, right? Now, this episode would be our version of that, because we've still got things to talk about, but the period of time that we're going to talk about now is quite a relaxed time. We're just mainly going to chat about what were the Valar up to in the lead up to the creation, to the awakening of the elves and stuff. So there's this chunk of time that we're going to talk about today, right? Called the Years of Bliss, and before things start to kick off again. And we're just going to chat about what the Valar were up to, and then towards the end of it, we're going to talk about the cosmology of where the children of the Ilúvatar fit into things.
Okay.
So, if we pick up from where we left off last time, is Middle Earth, the continent, is in darkness now, right? The lamps that lit it are gone, and the light of the trees of Valinor is behind the mountains, behind the Pelori mountains that the Valar raised up.
Yes, that he couldn't cross.
Not without significant effort, yeah. But the main light of Middle Earth at this point is the stars that Varda creates.
Yeah.
The wife of Manwe. And so the world's in twilight, essentially. It's not fully dark, it's just lit by stars. Right? There's no sun and moon yet. They don't exist yet. And in this darkness across Middle Earth, Melkor walked and did his thing. And it said that he wielded the cold from the top of the mountains and the fire from underneath them. So basically, wherever he goes, he can wield fire and cold. And it said that anything cruel or violent or deadly from those days is because of him or comes from him. So it's at this time that like beasts started to like slaughter and kill each other, and like there was a lot of violence just from his influence. And do you know last week I mentioned that time started to be counted now?
Yeah.
And I mentioned, I kind of went over it very briefly, but I said Yavanna started singing the trees into existence, and then they flowered and stuff like that. That might have been a bit of a simplification, because between Yavanna starting to sing and the trees flowering for the first time is 35,000 of our years. So that was a bit of a long one. So she starts singing, and the sapling...
This is like A-level physics all over again.
Kind of. Well, so it could be its own episode, and it should be its own episode, but the passage and counting of years within Tolkien's Legendarium is quite different. So once you get to the sun and moon, and they're called the years of the sun, it's fine. It's pretty much 1-to-1 for us. But you've got the years of the trees, the years of the lamps, and they are counted, and the years of Valinor, or Valian years.
So it's like how dogs have 7 years
Yeah,
to one.
pretty much, yeah. And there's like...
Trees have 35,000 to our one
well,
or something.
but it's just...
No.
If we count it in years of the sun, from Yavanna singing the saplings into existence on the Elazar, the hill, right, to them flowering for the first time and the light starting, that's 35,000 of our years. But now that the trees are flowered, right, the trees are doing their thing, they're waxing and waning their light, right, it mingles, it's gold, it's silver, and it mingles because one tree's gold, one tree's silver. Between so this is the point where we're going to pick up now, right? Between that point and the awakening of the elves, we've still got roughly another 10,500 of our years. So the episode we're talking about today, is going to take place over the next 10,000 years or so.
Okay.
So I might say, like, he spent time chilling. It was a long fucking chill. Do you know what I mean? Anyway.
Right, this is a random question.
Yeah.
What material are the trees made out of? Is it like normal tree material, as in wood, but like a silver birch looks silver?
So,
you said the trees are gold and silver.
So that was, again, an oversimplification. So they are trees, as in trees. Like
Bark.
Yeah, bark and wood and leaves and that. And Telperion is described as having leaves of dark green with that shine like silver underneath, and is constantly dripping like silver dew, which is like starlight. So they're magical trees, but they are trees. And spoiler alert, they get wrecked at one point. And
I might as well go to bed now, because that's that's all I was waiting for. I just wanted to find out what happened to the tree.
Aye, but so what we're going to cover now is about 10,500 of our years, what we'd count as a year. And
it's not going to take that long, though.
No, it won't. It'll take about 40 minutes. And so in this time, for most of the Valar, they've got no reason to come across the Pelori Mountains that they raised. Like, it was too depressing, basically. Morgoth had fucked everything up that they'd worked uncounted years, literally because time hadn't begun. They'd worked uncounted years to perfect this, and they'd fought against him. And they'd had something perfect to the point where they could stop their labours and have a feast. And he fucked it up. A couple of exceptions. But we'll go through what some of the Valar were up to in this time. So Aule spent most of the time in his mansions working. And Aule was the smith of the Valar. So he worked on most of the things that were either made better.
Was he in the gap of the mountain?
What do you mean?
You know how there was two, like a husband and wife, at the gap of the mountain? The gateway, they weren't exactly at the mountain, but they were looking out back across Middle Earth. No, that's Manwe and Varda. Okay. Aule is married to Yavanna, but Aule, so his mansions are in the north of Valinor. Okay. And he's basically responsible for things that were made better in a man. And also, just a detour from this, you have to tell everyone what part of your birthday present was. From her parents.
Oh yeah, a blacksmithing workshop.
Yeah, see?
That's going to be fucking awesome. I can't wait. But yeah, I get to go and play a blacksmith for an evening or day or whatever. I don't know if they're going to let me make a sword. It'll probably be a fucking horseshoe. But
no, I know what you're making.
Oh dear, what is it?
Well, it's if you want to make it.
Better not be a dick. That'll be a penis.
It's not. It's something really practical. In our lives, at least.
Is it a coat hook?
No.
Oh, I don't know why.
That's really boring.
I don't know why my mind went there.
It's related to my birthday present.
Is it a cheese wheel?
It's a cheese cutter.
Oh my god, that's going to be mint. I'm going to sharpen it and shank someone. There you go. But yeah, so I'm going to be Aule for the day. But with Aule, anyone who wanted to learn about blacksmithing, woodworking, weaving, farming, etc., all that knowledge has its utmost source in him.
So that would be, I would live up there with him.
Yeah, pretty much. Although for people
That's my jam.
People who learned about farming, that comes from his wife Yavanna as well, because it involves all the things that grow, which is what she's responsible for. I'm going to throw some names out here that you don't expect to remember them because we'll come on to them later. There are certain groups of elves, and one of these groups is called the Noldor. And the Noldor elves would learn the most from Aule. They would be kind of like his favourites. So the Valar all have like certain groups of elves that are pretty much their favourites, or the elves have favourite Valar. And the Noldor learn everything they can from Aule, and they expand and they build on what he teaches them eventually far in the future, right? And that includes the first gems that are ever made in this world come from the elves that Aule teaches. And that splits off into its own very long, very sad story about the Silmarils, which were gems of beauty, great beauty, which a very sad story, given the fascination that everybody in Arda seems to have with fucking shiny things. It causes a lot of pain. And the story of the Silmarils actually pretty much weaves its way through the entirety of the first age. We're just building up to that at the moment.
Okay.
Hence the book that this all comes from is called The Silmarillion, named after those gems, right? What I didn't go over is that of all the Valar, Aule and Melkor are the most similar, which is interesting because Eru makes Melkor the most mighty, but he also makes him Manwe's brother. But with Aule, he's actually the most similar because they both want to create new things and make new things. The difference is that Aule doesn't go against Eru's will in doing it. He doesn't seek to create life or well, he does, but he does it in an innocent way, and he doesn't seek to dominate life like Melkor does. He just wants to do his dad proud, and he wants to. I'm not comparing myself to a god, but you know how I'll learn things just for the sake of learning it.
Yes.
It's similar to that. It's like he's one of those people who...
You're a hobby person.
Yeah, exactly. He'll seek knowledge for the sake of it because he likes to know and he likes to teach people things. I look at work, and you know where I'm like when I've talked to you about it, I love teaching people my job.
Yeah.
And I love teaching people like how to do things better, and I feel so much pride when I train people and then I see them go on to do successful things. And that's kind of the vibe from Aule, whereas Melkor is very much like if he teaches you something,
he still wants you underneath him.
He wants you underneath him so that he'll always know more than you, but he always wants you to know that you've only got that knowledge because of him.
Yeah.
And
he ties you to him.
Exactly. And, you know...
He's like, I want a percentage.
Yeah, pretty much. You want a kickback. Christopher, you see this fucking Aule, I want a kickback. Yeah, so he's a bit like a Tony Soprano in that sense. But Aule isn't jealous, and Melkor is jealous as fuck. To the point where everything that Melkor creates is just a twisted mockery of something else. Because he's that jealous of a person. And it's for this reason that they're so similar, that Melkor undid everything that Aule did, when they were creating the world. So Aule would make the mountain, and he'd knock it, Melkor would knock it down, etc. So we covered that in great detail last week, but Aule was pleased when other people created things and wanted to learn and to teach, and and Melkor was completely the opposite. He fucking hated it. He was jealous of everyone and everything. So that's how similar they are together, and that's what Aule was doing for the next 10,000 years or so. He's chilling. He's just fucking creating things. He makes the dwarves in this time, but that is going to be next week's episode. Because my original plan today was cover what the Valar are doing, and let's cover the dwarves, ents, and eagles, because they kind of come all together, which I didn't know until I read it. But we'll do that next week if you're up for it. You're on a Hindu next week, aren't you? Anyway, we'll sort the schedule out.
Yes, I am actually.
Yeah, don't worry about this, dear listener. You'll get a podcast. But we'll cover the dwarves, ents, and eagles next week. Manwe, one of the other Valar, who you just meant to, spent his time sitting on his throne at the top of a mountain called Taniquetil.
Oh.
So yeah.
I don't need to remember this name, do I?
No. But
Taniquetil.
Taniquetil.
No, I'm going to remember it as Taniquetil, because Quetzal is the Q in the ABC book we read.
Oh yeah, we do. Yeah, the Q for Quetzal.
Taniquetil.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, Taniquetil.
That's as close as I'm going to get.
It is the highest mountain in the whole world. And Manwe spends most of his time up here just sitting and watching. And he has spirits that take the form of eagles and hawks that go all over the world. They go right everywhere. They go down to the bottom of the ocean. They can see everything. And they come back and they bring him news about what's going on. And that's what Manwe spends his time is listening. The only thing he can't see is things to do with Melkor, because Melkor's thoughts are so dark that they are impenetrable, and it becomes an impenetrable darkness around him. I personally have the theory that, we mentioned how the Valar can take on different forms, and it can become it can be the concept of something, could be their form.
Yeah.
I think that's literally an impenetrable shadow, because Melkor's leaking just fucking malice and jealousy, and it takes that form. So we got Melkor was the most powerful of the Valar, and Melkor is more similar to Aule, but Manwe is the one who is most dear to Eru. He's pretty much his favourite son, and he's the one who understands Eru's purpose most clearly. And because of this, he's the king of the Valar, and not only that, Manwe is called that. He's something like the highest king, or the king of kings, or something like that. But like every king in the world would still be subservient to him, because he's the king of the the gods essentially. Manwe's favourite group of elves were called the Vanyar, and to them he taught them song and poetry, which pretty badass. Interesting tidbit. I didn't get this about any of the other Valar, but Tolkien goes into detail about what Manwe wears. And his raiment is blue. He has a blue scepter and has blue eyes. And because Manwe is all about, it's like the king of the winds, I think it's nice to just imagine it as like sky blue. Like azure.
What's a raiment?
It's his clothes.
Ah.
Yeah, it's just a word for clothes. Like your raiment is clothes.
And he doesn't do that for any of the other.
There might be. I might have not read it, but like he describes Melkor's form as being like terrible in that, but he doesn't say, he's wearing Balenciaga. It's just on my.
Drop that in,
it's on my mind since I saw that TikTok. Like, so there was the TikTok of Harry Potter as Balenciaga, and then today I saw Lord of the Rings as Balenciaga, and I've gone from not knowing what Balenciaga is to being obsessed with just like the pounding techno beat and fashion shows, just because it's hilarious.
And that is why I don't have TikTok.
Yeah, well, you watch Instagram Short, YouTube Short.
I don't want to
it's
be
the
brainwashed.
same. It's the same fucking short form content, just on different platforms.
But it's more monitored. What I watch.
It's not.
It is.
It's not. You're full of shit.
Anyway.
Anywho.
That's for a different podcast.
Manwe was accompanied by his wife, Varda. And Varda, I was surprised to learn this, because I always thought Luthien was the most beautiful woman to ever exist, but I think Varda might have her beat. Her beauty is so great that it's beyond the words of men or elves, and this is Manwe's wife. In her face, apparently the light of Eru still lives on, so when you're looking at her, you're looking at the light of God himself, which is pretty fucking cool, right? And it's said that Varda knows all parts of the universe of Ea. And Varda, I was a bit surprised here. So we've got the relationships each of the Valar have with Melkor, right? Varda holds the spot of being the one that Melkor fears and hates the most, which I found really surprising. So before the
lightest light against the darkest dark.
So yeah, you've kind of nailed that. I've had to go and research this, right? But you've just fucking intuited it, right? Varda knew Melkor before the music of the Aino began. Do you know, when they were just in groups together and before they started singing together? But she saw his mind and rejected and despised him for it. She saw at that time what he wanted. He wanted to dominate life, and he wanted to create and twist and take Eru's light. And because of this, he hated her and feared her the most. But also as well, because Varda is the most associated with light, which Melkor is unable to control. He can control darkness, but he can't control light. And because of that, he hates and fears her more than any other. And I wanted to get your opinion on this, because my kind of take from this as well, and this is my interpretation, is, do you remember when you were dating, and before we met, hopefully before we met, I hope you're not still dating, but Melkor for me gives off this vibe of a spurned lover type thing. Do you know if you're someone who's trying to put the moves on you, right? And they're actually, you've got a red flag going off, or you recognise that they're actually there's something a bit wrong with them, or they're trying to be they're trying to fuck with you, or they're trying to be weird, and you call them out on it, and immediately they go hyper aggressive and say, "Well, you were a fat bastard anyway. I never fancied you. You're a proper bitch. Fuck you."
I remember that.
Yeah. So I've had that, and you've had
that I definitely.
Yes, you. So we've both had that, and that's what I took away from that with Melkor, is that he would have wanted to seduce or recruit Varda to his side, and straight away she was like,
Can't deal with rejection.
She was like, "You are a fucker," and he couldn't deal with the rejection, so he flipped and went hyper aggressive, and and now he still hates and fears her more than ever, because he's got that spurned that nice guy mentality, and I just wanted to see what your I wanted to see what your take was. So essentially it boils down to him again being a jealous little bitch. Varda is, I don't know if you'll recognise this word because it comes up in Lord of the Rings quite a lot, but Varda is also called Elbereth in the Sindarin language.
Oh, can we just pause for a second? So Varda is another Valar.
It's Manwe's wife. It's Manwe's wife, yeah. She's a Valar.
We're just listing them at this point, yeah.
We're just seeing what they're up to. Yeah. We've already talked about all of them.
I know, but it's just confusing me already.
Well, it's just there's multiple languages, right? Tolkien, and I love saying this, is a philologist, or was a philologist. A philologist. So different languages, right? So there's an elven language called Sindarin. There's Quenya and Sindarin, right? And most of this is in Quenya, but the Sindarin word for her is Elbereth. And that's it's who Frodo calls on. Do you know when he lights the file in Shelob's cave, and it's the light of Elbereth that he's calling on. But Varda and Manwe would sit together at the top of Tanaquethil, and they would look into Middle Earth, or they'd look all over the world. And do you know what I thought was really nice about this? If they're together and they sat looking together, Manwe sees further. You can see through mist and fog and clouds. You can see clearer when she's there. And when Varda sat with Manwe, she can hear more. She can hear further.
Is it because they're like cheerleaders for each other?
I don't know what it is, but I just thought it was really nice. That was quite touching. That couple.
Shit though, if they ever want to break up.
That's true. It is pointed out by Tolkien that
you'll never be your best self, your better self, if you're not with each other.
Maybe. But anyway, we'll move on to Ulmo. He stands out here. He lives alone in the ocean, in the deeps. He's like the Poseidon type character. He doesn't really live in Valinor, and he only goes to Valinor when he absolutely needs to for important business.
That sounds like me.
Yeah, otherwise he's like, I'm in the ocean, fuck off. Before the world was finished, he was closest in friendship to Manwe, but now again he only goes to Valinor when he needs to. And despite Ulmo loves men and elves probably more than most of the other Valar, he loves us dearly. That being said, though, to see him would be fucking terrifying, because he doesn't tend to take on a form like the others. He doesn't tend to look like a man or a woman or anything. But if you saw Ulmo coming towards you, it'd be like seeing a tsunami that you can't get away from, just coming to your shores. And sometimes he does visit us. He would visit Middle Earth and men and elves and that. And he'd come up the shores of the sea or up the rivers and play his horn, because he has a conch, the big seashell conch. And if you hear his music, it's said that the longing for the sea would never leave your heart. So if you heard the music of Ulmo, you'd never be satisfied until you...
So you've clearly heard it.
I love the sea. Yeah, I do. I do love the sea.
You get on any boat now.
I fucking love being out on the ocean. And this impacted elves the most deeply. I think, personally, it's because they're most in tune. Of the children of Ilúvatar, because they're tied to the world until the end, they're most in tune with the music of the world. And in the books, Legolas gets the sea longing when he hears seagulls for the first time. And he says, like, it's awoken in me the yearning for the sea, because until that point, Legolas had never seen the sea. Which is, yeah. Ulmo, at this point, he's responsible for all of the waters, like the courses of the rivers, the springs, and in the deep places, he sits and he listens to the music of the world. And he makes his own music, which is great and terrible. It's deep, terrible music. But, like, terrible in the sense that, like, awe-inspiring.
It's like that song.
Yeah, the longer the note, the more dread. It's like when Superhand, yeah, the longer the note, the more dread. Except Ulmo never got a contract to do an advert for Honda. Ulmo's favourite elves, or the elves who are, they're his favourite Valar, are called the Teleri, who are the seafaring elves. And as a result, their music, because they're influenced by Ulmo, is beautiful and sad at the same time, which is quite nice. I don't want to go too much into the Maiar that are associated with each Valar, because it's a big fucking tree. But Ulmo had a couple of Maiar that we should really point out here. Salmar is his main one, and he made the horns of Ulmo, called the Ulamuri, which are great conches that play the music, which I mentioned. And then there was Osse and Uinen, but they should be covered in another story because of how interesting they are. And they controlled the waves and the tides. And they have a big part to play in, like, when the elves, when some shit kicks off with the elves, basically. When we get to an elf called Feanor, and he makes the Silmarils, and he's responsible for the first instances of elves killing elves. Elf on elf crime. And they come into the...
Why does that sound like sexual?
I don't know. But Ulmo was the most unique... he's one of the most unique of the Valar, in that he never, for 1 second, forgot or forsook Middle-earth. Like the other Valar, most of them went across the ocean, were like, fuck this, peace out, bro. Ulmo never did that. And because of his faith and his power, life still continued, and the Earth didn't die. If Ulmo had forgotten about us and forgot about Middle-earth, chances are that the whole world would have died. But it didn't.
But do you not think that's because he's always had that separation?
I just think it's because...
Because he hasn't been immersed in all the drama. He's been, like, on the sideline, that he's able to deal with it for longer.
I don't know, because he's one of the main three, I'd say, like Manwe, Aule, Ulmo, of creating Arda. He's responsible for the whole oceans, right? And water is life, and it's like Zoolander, like water is the essence of wetness. But I think it's nice that even though he's terrifying, he's like
benevolent.
He's exactly, benevolent, and he always has time. Ulmo, he's always got his ear open for one of us, like the children of Ilúvatar, who would wander into the darkness. Like, if you go a bit astray, Ulmo would still want to guide you back to the path, and if you stray from the teachings of the Valar, he'd want to help you still, which is good. But another Valar who didn't forsake Middle-earth was Yavanna. So Ulmo would sit in the waters and he'd visit Middle-earth and what have you. Yavanna would also visit Middle-earth, and so would one other Valar who we'll talk about. But Yavanna, she would visit Middle-earth and try to heal the hurt and sickness that Melkor had caused. So he was wrecking the world. So, like you said, if Ulmo had forgot about us, the world would have forgot about Middle-earth, the world would have died, right? Yeah. I don't know why I'm saying us. Men and elves aren't awake yet, but
he is the life support machine.
Yeah, and Yavanna was...
She is the one trying to heal.
Yeah. So she'd go and she'd try and heal, and she'd try and turn things back green. Like, if, a sick and diseased tree, she'd try and heal them and stuff like that. But also, she spent a lot of her time coming back from Middle-earth and saying to the rest of the Valar, we need to go to war. We need to wage war against Melkor for the sake of the whole world. Which I find fascinating, that someone who's responsible for growing is the one who was like, get off your asses, we need to go and fucking punch him.
Yeah.
Like, class. Orome, the hunter. We've spoke about Orome quite a lot.
He the one with the deer.
No, that's Nessa, his sister.
Okay.
Orome is the one who rides Nahara, the horse.
Ah, yeah. Shadowfax's
grandfather,
great,
yeah. But Orome the hunter also went to Middle Earth in the Days of Bliss, but he'd go there to hunt the giant monsters and beasts that Melkor had created or bred. And what he'd do is he'd use his bow and spear, and the ground would shake when he rode Nahar. And it's said that his horse shone like silver in the shadows, and the ground would tremble when he rode by with his golden hooves. And when this would happen, he'd also blow his horn called Valaroma, and Morgoth and his servants would shit themselves and hide and quake with fear. Melkor would hide himself in a Tumnor because he knew eventually the Valar were going to come for him. And it was when Orome was out on the hunt that's when, that's when things had he'd be reminded that I think I'm on borrowed time here. And it's interesting that it always comes back to that fear. Like, no matter how cruel and powerful Melkor is, he's always scared as well. And it's crazy.
He's not like a crazy person.
Yeah, exactly.
Because crazy people don't have fear.
Yeah, but he's not like hopped up on bath salts or anything.
Yeah.
It's just he knows that shit's gonna go down. Maybe like a bully.
He's like an opportunist, isn't he?
I can't remember. Honestly, I thought it was like some deep quote, and I think I've realised it's actually fucking Harry Potter I'm thinking of.
Oh no!
But I think there's like a quote from Harry Potter where it says,
"We can't say Harry Potter quotes anymore."
But I think there's a conversation. It might be in Harry Potter where it says like, tyrants everywhere fear that one day the people they oppress would rise up against them, or some shit like that. And I think Melkor, it's very much of the same vein with Melkor, right? It's like a common theme through history, like you oppress people, and there will be someone who'll stand up against you. But that's what the Valar, most of them, are up to. Mandos is sat. I don't know what the fuck the other Valar are up to be honest. I didn't look it up. But we're ramping up now towards the creation of the children of Ilúvatar, like the awakening. So we'll go over it again next week, but during these 10,000 years or so, Aule creates the dwarves, gets told to put them back to sleep. The Ents and the Eagles are on a promise about when they're going to come. And everyone's getting ready. So let's discuss a little bit about where the children of Ilúvatar fit into kind of like the big picture. When you think of like humans and elves compared next to the Valar, how would you see us? Like, how would you see that relationship?
I would say that humans with the Valar, like the Valar are like gods to humans, and I would say that elves are like the next step down, but also approachable enough that humans could approach with like for help or
yeah. I thought that as well. My opinion was always like they were the gods to be worshipped, and same as the Ainur in general were like major and minor gods to be worshipped and what have you, and the elves were like lords and stuff like that, right? It's actually it's actually quite a lot different that I didn't realise, but the Valar consider themselves more our brethren, they're our brothers and sisters, than they wouldn't think of themselves as kings. Like they're like big brothers and sisters to us, right? That's how they see themselves. They'd be more like our chieftains and advisors than rulers. And the reason for that is because all of us, Valar, Maiar, elves, men, dwarves, Ents and Eagles, arguably are Maiar, but all of us are children of Ilúvatar. We all came from his thought. And also adding into that is that the Ainur, the Valar and the Maiar, they've got no fucking clue, or they had no clue, where elves and men were coming from or why they were put there. They just knew that Eru considered them important. And do you remember that during the Ainur Lindale, the Ainur didn't dare contribute to the music that made Elves and Men? because they didn't understand it, so they didn't sing it. They were too scared. They were like, I don't want to fuck this up. So they didn't contribute to that music. So because of that, they just consider Elves and Men. I think I'm slipping too deep into the fantasy because I could just keep saying us. They consider Elves and Men as just little brothers and sisters, which I think is like, that was very surprising when I found that out. I was like, oh shit, okay. But because of this, because they don't really consider themselves to have the right to rule over us or they can't dominate us in the same way that Melkor would, it has never or rarely ever went well if Valar or Maiar have tried to force men or elves to do something, regardless of how good their intentions are. So because of that, because they don't really have this intrinsic right to dominate us or dictate what we should do, they nothing good ever comes of it. Elves were made to be more like the Ainur in the outlook and stature. So it's exactly like you said, they are more like a step down, but still kind of relatable. That's why Gandalf gets on so well with like Elrond and Galadriel and Círdan the Shipwright, who's missed out in the films, but is a very powerful figure in lore. It's because, it's not a great deal different. They are spiritual creatures that are ultimately tied to the fate of the world. Because you remember when Valar and Maiar came down from the Timeless Halls into the universe, the agreement was, you're here till the end.
Yeah.
Elves are also here until the end. But men are not. We're not here until the end. And that's why... so Eru made elves more like the Ainur, but men received something else. We received gifts. And our gifts, essentially, are death and free will. Which, amazingly, in the due fullness of time, even the Valar will come to be jealous of men for the gifts that they have. Because time will wear on everyone, even the Valar. And men don't have to deal with that. We have short lives, and we die, and we go. Elves, Maiar, and Valar are there right until the end. Their fate is tied to the world itself. So Eru gave the gift... Oh, sorry. Just to add some more language here as well.
Oh, no.
Eru gave men and elves new names. His original names were... Elves were called the Quendi, and men were called the Atani. Eru first gave men the gift that they could act beyond the music of the Ainur. They have free will. Mortals have free will.
Yeah.
They can act beyond the music. And that means that they can fulfill the music of the Ainur Lindale down to the finest detail. So let's go back to work, for example. In my work, I'm quite autonomous with kind of like, I'm not paid for the time I'm there. I'm more paid for what I do. And it's... Someone will say, like, we've got to deliver this bit of work, and it's largely left up to me to figure that out. That's the same kind of deal, right? Instead of someone in a call centre saying, here's a script, you've got to do this, this, and this exactly straight from it, and you'll get sacked. That's what, people who don't have free will, like elves and that, they have to kind of go down that line. Whereas with men, because their lives are so short and they have free will, they're left much more to like, here is what ultimately needs to happen overall. The detail we'll leave to you. And that's one of the gifts men have, is that free will. They can be unpredictable and they can make new things. And I thought that maybe it's for this reason that Frodo was the only one who could carry from the ring to the end of the quest. Because ultimately the ring was going to be destroyed, right? And Frodo, he didn't fail in his quest, but he got to the end of what he could do. And then Gollum grabbed the ring, because Gollum also has free will, because they're of the Atani, right?
Yeah.
Hobbits are descended from men, or split off. And it was an act of free will for him to do that. But ultimately, in that act of free will, he still served the music of Eru, because Eru would, that was always going to happen, that the ring would be destroyed, right?
Yeah.
In the music of Eru. And it's that free will that allowed that to happen. So that's why I think, personally, an elf couldn't have destroyed the One Ring, no matter who you sent. You could have sent Glorfindel, one of the most powerful elves to have ever lived. You could have sent a whole army of elves, but because they don't have free will in the same way that men do, it might not have been able to happen. Which, that's just speculation.
My head's hurting.
We're nearly done, I promise. But Eru also saw that we'd fight and turn to evil, etc., like men in general. And so he said that, just like he said with Melkor, anything that men did would eventually benefit the design of Eru anyway. So you can stray from the vision of the universe, and we can do what we want with our lives because we've got total free will. So one individual's act of evil, or life of evil, overall will still serve the purpose of the music. It will still serve Eru. And I'm going to ask you here, what are your, and it's quite philosophical for an evening, but what are your thoughts on free will within a predetermined system of fate?
It's not free will.
I know, right? Like, how do you reconcile that?
It's just, I wouldn't say that was free will at all. Because whatever you do, you're going to end up getting to the same place. Yeah. But I mean, you can have fun on the way, so it's how you use it, really.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's quite a weird one, because individually, you still have free will, right? But overall, the universe is going to right itself. Well, I think that's essentially where it would be, right? I've just realised that's probably a good way. Like, it's a good way of thinking it. The music of the Ainur and the music of Eru is the universe eventually will right itself. So do whatever the fuck you want. Eventually, it will right. It's just interesting to think of, like, you've got one of the gifts of Eru is free will, but ultimately it's going to serve his design anyway. So, is that still free will? Or is it an illusion of choice? It's interesting. It's a lot more complex the more you think about it, isn't it? Like, because then it comes to the question of, does one person's life of free will actions, and then they die and know no more about it, but ultimately is still furthering a purpose they didn't have any idea of? Is that still free will?
I can't really comment because I'm not a free person. Whereas clearly they haven't got all the influences that we have. Political, the media. So I don't class myself as a free person because we're really not with technology. Whereas they didn't have they don't have technology that tracks them and knows where they're at and their every thought. And
arguably, it is a decision and an act of free will
to choose to use it.
To choose to use it and to chain yourself to these things. Like, I'm not on social media, right? And my life's no worse for it. And arguably it's better. I'm not comparing myself to people. But, and especially you, as I've said this time and time again, right? As a mum, you're exposed to uncounted influences telling you you're a bad person if you don't do this, this and this. And you've even got other mums telling you you're a bad person if you don't do the specific thing that they do, which would take away all your free will. So arguably, I'd say that you and I have made free will decisions, consciously or unconsciously. My decision is to not subject myself to the mores of social media.
But then how
you
would
continue
you know
to consume
all the juicy gossip of our estate and like what specific bin it was that day? And
I would say that local Facebook groups are fucking something else.
Yeah, but there's a lot of good things that you have benefited a lot from the things that I know through social media.
Well, it's why it's not an easy question,
Where to eat.
Yeah, exactly.
Good places to eat, you wouldn't know.
That's true. Right, interesting. That was an interesting aside, actually. Like, social media is something you could talk about forever.
It's
to be
a trap.
It is a trap, yeah. It's a trap. Admiral Akbar. So, anyway, but because of these gifts, the elves think that men cause the most grief to Manwe, because we resemble Melkor the most of all. Even though, as fucking usual, Melkor hates and fears men, even the ones that serves him. Even the ones that serve him. The other gift we have is death. Elves are stuck within the world, right, until it ends, along with the Ainur. But men get to leave, and nobody knows where they go. But I think the prevailing idea is that they get to go and be with Eru in the Timeless Halls. And this, again, as I mentioned earlier, this is something that even the Valar will envy as time goes on. Because, again, the time wears on everyone. Death, as I mentioned, is a gift, but as it's also a pattern emerging here, Melkor fucked it up for us. Royally fucked it up for us. He cast doubt on men's ability to perceive death, and he made a shadow of the gift, and he brought fear out of hope and evil out of good. So instead of welcoming death and appreciating it for the gift it is, we fear it. Like, intrinsically now, is that we seem to fear death. Which,
some people do in the real world.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Yeah, I do. Now, especially now we've got a daughter, like, I fear death more, but, like, it's more that unfinished kind of business. Whereas I used to be scared of it because of the act of dying. Not so much now. It's more like, I want to make sure that my daughter can survive and be by herself. Like, that's what scares me. But the idea of dying and resting is kind of comforting at some point, but again, only if I go on my terms. Which
Get a nice sleep.
The Kings of Numenor, for example, Elrond's brother, Elros, he chose to be of the Atani, like, he chose his heritage. Elrond chose to be an elf, and Elros chose to be a man. He became the first king of Numenor. And all of that line, they could choose when they died, and Aragorn chose when to die. And Aragorn and the Kings of Numenor, they knew death to be the gift that it was, so they went gladly, whereas most others are scared of it. But it's said that when the world is to be remade at the end of all things, men, the Atani, will join in with the second music of the Aino and sing a perfect world into existence again, just like it was when Almoran was an island and it was sat right in the middle and everything, which, would be perfect. However, I found this interesting, and I don't know if there's later writings that contradict it, but nobody knows what's going to happen to the elves when the world gets remade. That's going to be interesting. They could just fucking go. But yeah, crazy. But that's pretty much like the end of that's where we're up to for this week. So we know where the children of Eru Ilúvatar fit into the cosmology. We know what the Valar have been up to over the last 10,000 years, and we're just kind of chilling. But what we'll go to next week is the creation of the dwarves, the eagles, and the ents. Because the dwarves are the adopted children of Ilúvatar, and the ents and the eagles are spirits that are drawn to these forms, and we'll discuss them next week, if that's agreeable with you, my love.
Yeah, you've raised a big life question for me now.
About what?
And I'm feeling a bit anxious.
What about?
So, if you believe in heaven,
yeah,
or them going to live in the grand halls,
yeah, the timeless halls,
yeah, then you're going to live forever, but in this lovely place. But even that would suck. I
think the idea always is that...
Who wants to live forever? Yeah. Even if you're a spirit?
Well, maybe you could choose non-existence. Saruman. So Saruman, when Saruman dies in the books, right? He looks towards the west, towards Valinor, and a cold wind comes, and that's Manwe, and he blows and he dissipates Saruman's spirit. And he's rejected, so he's tied to the world until it's ended. He doesn't get to go anywhere because he's a Maiar. But maybe non-existence could be an option if that's what you're into. Or maybe what you find when you die, you're ultimately, and we leave the world, you're fulfilled and you will exist forever in a form that you're happy with. But who knows? Who knows?
When am I going to get a rest?
Yeah. Are you ready for your fun fact of the week? And this one is genuinely fun. I had a lot of fun looking this one up.
Go on then. You've twisted my arm.
So this is from our real world, right? There is a planet in our solar system called Saturn. Have you heard of it?
It rings a bell.
Oh, you. Right. Saturn's moon, Titan.
Yes.
Or one of its moons. I don't know if it's got more. All the mountain ranges on that are, by NASA's decree, named after Tolkien mountain ranges. So on Titan, there is a Tanquetil, Angmar, Moria, Erebor, Misty Mountains, etc. So they're all named after places in Middle-earth, right?
No.
Yeah, and I looked at the NASA website just before we started recording, and the exact quote is, by convention, mountains on Titan are named for mountains from Middle-earth, the fictional setting in fantasy novels by J.R.R. Tolkien. The only other thing that is that the highest mountain on Titan is not called Mount Doom or Tanquetil. It's I don't know what it is, somewhere else.
So you're telling me that there is a ultimate space nerd out there that is also an ultimate Lord of the Rings fan?
So to go further than that, there is a dark patch on Pluto that's called Mordor. There are I looked into this a little bit. There's comets out there that are called Frodo and Bilbo. So like a lot of space stuff is named after Tolkien. I think there's a star called Erendil, same as in Tolkien. So yeah, like lots of stuff gets named. I was watching a video the other day. There's a YouTuber called Tolkien Untangled, like Rainbow Dave. I've had it on in the background, and one of his facts was about there's loads of beasts named after Nazguls, and like there's loads of animals named after Nazgul and stuff like that. There's one frog that's named after the Nazgul, but a lot of creatures get named after the Nazgul, and then you've got NASA, who's fucking Lord of the Rings nerds.
Do you know what? Nothing is new, is it?
No. I was thinking this the other day. I was talking to the D&D lot, and someone sent a video in the group about like when your character dies and you come back the next session with like my character's called one of my characters is called Albert, and I've always said that if he dies, his brother's going to come looking for him, and he's called Balbert. But then that was the exact joke in the video that they sent, and I was like, there's never been an original fucking thought in anything. It's like that. It's like that. Like, you know, the group. The group. What's it called? Like group consciousness or something. Global consciousness or something. Or the global unconscious. I don't know. The idea that once an idea is there, it's like gets uploaded into the internet of brains, and humans as a whole know about it. That's why, like, you have like historical concepts that are simultaneously developed between civilizations that have no knowledge of each other. But yeah, so no, nothing's original. So not even this podcast. I mean, there's nobody else out there doing drunk Tolkien history, but there's nobody out there bringing Tolkien back to the common man, as far as I can see. But you know.
I wonder whether anyone's made the L. Ron Hubbard connection.
They better not. Do you know what? I had a great idea. There was L. Ron Hubbard t-shirts I wanted to get made, right? Which we, you know, if we ever do sell merch, I'll do L. Ron Hubbard. But I also want to do a comic or like a Disney show about baby Valar, about like toddlers just making him fucking wrecking a world.
Yeah.
Which I thought would be pretty funny after talking to someone who listens. But yeah, that was your fun fact for the week, and that was our little relaxed fit. Talking about what the Valar were up to in the Years of Bliss.
I feel like your fact of the week, like you've only done 2. I feel like you've started too big.
Really?
Yeah.
There's lots of facts I can keep going with. Like, so there's one for every week. There's loads of weird shit.
Well, I'm just going to hold you to it.
Well, I don't...
Yeah, no
anyway.
shitty facts.
Have you enjoyed both the facts so far?
Yes, I have.
Oh, that's good then.
I'm going to go around spreading them this week.
But no, that's it from us. I think next week we'll cover the dwarfs, like we said. And do you have any final thoughts of today's episode?
Please, if you listen to this, do not feel sad about your existence. Because it has also raised a lot of philosophical questions in my head, and I'm just going to go to bed and forget about them.
Right, okay. Right, well, on that cheery note, I'm going to say good night from me. Have a lovely day, evening, afternoon, whatever, when you're listening to this. And we'll be back next week with another lovely episode. So good night from me.
And good night from Rebecca.
Okay, bye.